Hello out there, Foxes fans, and welcome back to another edition of the U.S. Foxes podcast, coming to you live as always from various parts of the United States, all the way across from the Pacific to the Atlantic. We've got you covered. I, as always, am your host, Matt Folks, coming to you live from San Diego, California, as well as my co-host, Mr. Chris Warner. He is up there in Del Mar. How you doing today, Christopher, on this fine, sunny Sunday?
Matt, it stopped raining. I suppose that's the biggest win of the
Yeah,
weekend.
it was
Crappy
nasty.
weather, crappy performance. Yeah, it's been a not the best weekend, buddy.
It was one of those rare days where the weather, in the Midlands is actually better than the weather in San Diego, and they're not very often. I know it was chilly, but it was absolutely pouring the rain in San Diego yesterday. So I know it was chilly in London or in KP, but at least they didn't have the water. Jason, how are you over in New York City, Mr. Jason Becker of the New York Foxes? What's your guys' weather like yesterday?
It was pretty frigid, below freezing. I'm a little disappointed, I have to say, after seeing some pictures around California this weekend. I was hoping that you guys would be out in your snow boots down there in San Diego,
Dude.
but guess there was none of the white stuff down in your tropical part of the world.
Very close, just 40 minutes from here. They got like 6 inches or something.
Oh, wow.
So the elevation change in San Diego County is just crazy. Like within an hour, you can literally go 10 degrees difference in temperature. So they did get a lot of snow in certain parts, but no, it didn't quite make it to the beach where we are. But yeah, so cold for all the U.S. Foxes, it sounds like, but not as cold as Leicester's offense against Arsenal. Wow, just what a stinker for the ages. One of the worst displays we've seen in a very long time, a historically bad display, as it were. The boys just come out and look terrible from minute one against an Arsenal team that just had a shooting gallery, basically. As soon as you saw the lineup, we found out Matters was sick, so he wasn't going to be playing. It just kind of worked as an omen for the rest of the match. Jason, I guess your thoughts as we started breaking this one down.
Yeah, we played well, I thought, defensively, and didn't give Arsenal a lot of clear looks at goal, but we've shown time and time again that we're just unable right now for a while now, we're unable to play those types of games and not concede. And oftentimes, our best shot at keeping the other side out of our net or to have them score fewer goals than we score during the game is for us to attack with intent. And it was one of the most flaccid offensive performances I've ever seen from the club, which is, I think on its surface, you look at 1-0 to Arsenal when we're missing, our best player, and you're like, all right, we'll take it. But what are we doing in this league only having one shot attempt on goal? It's just, what's the point? Just go out and try to make it a game.
Yeah, it was just unreal. It seemed like it was pretty obvious to me. Like, this is an Arsenal team that is historically good for them in a long time. Like, they have not been this good in a long time. And it was quite obvious that our only offensive chances were going to come on the break. They are not a team that was going to be broken down by us. And it just seemed to me, Chris, like every time we would get a little momentum and get on the counter, and suddenly we would have numbers. Somehow we would have, a 3-on-2 or a 4-on-3. The guy that would have the ball, whether it was Nacho, whether it was Harvey, whether it was KDH, they would get forward, and we'd start getting a little excited at the blue foot, and then suddenly they'd stop and turn around and look backwards, allowing the entire Arsenal defense to get back into the play. Chris, is that pretty much your summarization of
Matt, I
things
think
as well?
You sum it up perfectly, mate. You were texting me that consistently every time. Like we know what Brendan Rodgers' game plan is in these situations. It's play safe for the first 70 minutes, Try and keep it as tight as possible. Try and keep it 0-0, and then look to push that last 20 minutes, maybe through substitutions or changing tactics. But in this instance, the changing substitutions happen, but nothing else, mate. I'm 100% with both of you guys. That was flaccid. It was poor. It looked like nobody wanted to even be on the pitch at times. It was just so lackadaisical as well. And if you look at their goal, it's just us faffing around on the right-hand side with tippy-tappy. No one's put a foot in. We kind of just try and knock it to a player, but don't really knock it to him. And then all of a sudden, Arsenal go fast, break, score. I mean, that was the other thing that struck me as well, that game, was how quick Arsenal were, both going forward, but then to your point, Matt, defensively reorganizing themselves, getting back into shape and getting rid of any sort of attack that we had. We were just off it in terms of pace, tactics, just everything. It was one to forget, I think, as the podcast title says, mate.
Yeah, I think we were all hoping for a response, and it almost seemed like the players were just trying to cut their losses at Old Trafford last weekend, right? And just say, look, clearly the universe and the referee are working against us here. We're not getting anything out of this game. Let's, get to the final whistle, get out of here, dust ourselves off, get back out there next week and make something of it. And we've seen this. We'll cover this, I think, a bit later in the episode. But it's like time and time again, whenever we expect like a certain type of response, and like to expect to see a little bit more fight from the team, and just like when a loss or run of results kind of sets up in a certain way, and you just expect a natural human response to be like, all right, you know what, we were wronged, or this is a big one, or what do we have to lose? Like this game was we're playing with house money here. I think there was no reason not to go for it, and we just never really seemed to show up in these situations over the last few years. And it was disappointing because back home against Arsenal, we're not supposed to get anything. Without Matters, we're not supposed to get anything. But it's almost one of those games where like you'd almost rather go down again like 3-0 again, like it did against Man United, like going out and attacking them and going at them in the first half. And there was none of that.
Yeah, that's what really kind of pissed me off more than anything. Like it's as we said, a historically good Arsenal team, top of the league, very, very dangerous, very skilled players. But that's not really the point. The point for me was the fact that we just did nothing against it. There was zero try. Like when you're playing a team like this, fine, you're not expected to win, but at least go out there and act like you give a shit. Or make some, diving tackles, make some efforts, get your boots stuck in there on some of these plays rather than just letting them waltz right by you. My God, guys, if I had a beer for every time that, we watched a player get the ball and collect it and run right past the defender, I'd have been drunk even faster than I got already at the match.
Well, I mean, I don't think we were that bad defensively. I thought we were good defensively. I think we did a really good job of limiting clear-cut chances for Arsenal, but we did that at the expense of our attacking play. There were some positives for me, and I think Victor Christensen is a major positive. It was really good seeing him play with the intensity that he played with. He really frustrated Saka throughout the game. I thought he did a very good job on him. He drew a bunch of fouls late in the game. I think Saka was lucky to get out of there without a yellow for some of those, or at least for the persistent fouling. And he played with a lot of aggression. He did a good job of like getting up the pitch. He showed a good motor on him. So that was I think really encouraging to see. I do think that while we weren't nearly as tidy with the ball as we should have been, I thought Wilf did all right. in the middle of the pitch, considering like he hasn't had like a good run of games. He's dealt with injuries this year. He hasn't been playing so well, but I think like defensively, he did a pretty good job. He was winning duels, won most of his duels, had a few blocks in there, had a couple of interceptions and ball recoveries. I think for the most part, the goal on that side, everyone who touched the ball like totally, screwed it up, and it was just one of those where you're going to have one mistake a game. There's no way you can play against this Arsenal team and play a perfect defensive game, especially when you're defending for 90 minutes. But those were two players yesterday that I liked what I saw, and I know a lot of people were questioning dropping Mendy, but what does it matter if you start Pappy Mendy in a game where you're not going to even get up the pitch at all, so you might as well have more of a physical presence in the middle of the field. And I'd like to see more from someone wearing the captain's armband, and that's another discussion I think about leadership on the team. But just in terms of I guess his overall game, Wilf I thought was better than he has been for most of the season, and Christensen really looks like an outstanding signing because Saka had Luke Thomas on ice skates every game we've played against Arsenal. So it was really good to see Victor come in and just say I don't give a crap who you are. Like, let's go. Let's battle it out.
Yeah, Big Dick Vic definitely had a better attitude than and made things way harder on Saka than we saw earlier in the year with Luke Thomas. I will say, he does kind of have that fuck you attitude, and I think we're seeing it more and more, and I think that's a great thing. If we can get that to sort of spread amongst the back line and our midfield, maybe it'd be nice.
Yeah, I'd love for that to be just as contagious as this chest cold that's going around New York City right now. So apologies for my voice.
No worries, bud. No worries. Well, it's just deeper and sexier than normal.
I think you bring up a great point there, Jason, about Christensen. And to me, it's really highlighted, I think, the struggles of Castagne recently, because now we've got someone on that left-hand side that's kind of doing things that we've typically want to see in a fullback. And you look at Castagne's performance yesterday, and maybe he's not at fault for the goal. Like you said, there's some tippy-tappy stuff. But I remember in that second half, especially the long ball that went forward, and Castagne just lets it bounce, and it bounces straight over his head and puts us in the shit, because now all of a sudden we've got the whole team facing our own goal running backwards. And to me, it's just been one of those eye-openers, I think, since we've had Christensen come in the team, about, I think, how much we need Ricky P down that right-hand side to give, I think, that balance that we're looking for. Because you could see the way Arsenal played yesterday. They were switching it quickly. If it was over on Saka's side, they'd get it over to the other side as possible. Our fullbacks would come in, and then we'd struggle to get out to them. And so it's been kind of an eye-opener to me anyway, about, I think, some of the struggles that Castagne has had this season, because of the fact now we've got a left-back in that looks like he's the business.
Yeah, he definitely does. And I think when you see, it's kind of tough too, because Timmy, we've done nothing but sing his praises as far as like his work rate when he came into the side, and the offense that he had produced when he first came in. I mean, right off the bat, he was kind of one of those players that really surprised us with his offensive production as well as his defense. But yeah, what do you think, Jason? Is Chris right on there for you with him?
Yeah, well, I think we've seen we give up a lot of chances over the top on the right side. That just seems to be a lot of green grass there for opposition wingers to run into, and that's kind of a weakness in our setup. I wonder how much of that is down to Castagna and how much of it is down to kind of how Rodgers wants to balance the formation. He's pretty decent one-on-one. Doesn't get burned up a whole lot. He's shown a little bit more going forward lately with I mean, no one showed anything going forward yesterday, but over the last couple of games, he has shown a lot more going forward, playing with Tete. There's a little bit of chemistry developing there. I think later in the game yesterday, he did make a couple of good ghosting runs. It's just unfortunate that he couldn't get on the ball. But I agree with Chris that it does look like a soft spot in our setup. But I don't know how much of that is down to Castagna and how much of that is down to how the side is set up. But effectively, yeah. I mean, Chris is right on though. That's where we look soft.
A few of the individual things that happened during the match that, I mean, there's not a lot for us to talk out on our side. But 26th minute, there's the Trossard VAR call. Danny Ward, I don't know. At the time when I was watching at the bar, I was like, wow, we just got a makeup call from last week from the VAR officials. Then I watched it today again on the highlights, and you can, if you really look, you do see he does have Danny's arm. But still, I'd love to get your opinion. We'll start with you, Chris, on that VAR call.
I mean, whoever decides to set up the cameras at the KP, good for you, sir, on that one. Thank you. I mean, the camera was probably in the only place where you'd probably have seen that. Yeah, again, I think maybe it was a makeup call, but it would be interesting to me to see the process involved in that. I don't necessarily know if VAR is there for that sort of call. I'm not sure, mate, but yeah, fair play to the cameraman. It was a great angle, and it was. Once you saw it, but to your point, Matt, though, once you saw it, you were like, "Oh, that's a foul." Like you can't. But I mean, yeah, maybe a makeup call from last week.
God bless you for saying you'd love to see how these decisions are made. Wouldn't we all? Jason, your thoughts?
Well, when it first happened, we were saying to each other at Football Factory, like, what is Ward complaining about? Like, it just didn't look like there was much in it. Chris, giving kudos to the right place there. Was a hell of a place, an angle to have that camera. It was a great spot. I don't know if I would have looked for it that way. It did look like a foul, but it did also look a little bit soft. And was it a clear and obvious decision? Maybe not. But you gotta take your luck when you get it, man.
Yeah, nice to have one go for our way.
Just, I think I'm sure the guys in the with the earpieces on and the Hawkeye technology on their wrists are not big fans of Jason Becker, because we know all the referees of the Premier League are big fans of the US Fox's podcast, and
yes.
I'm sure they're all listening. Heard me loud and clear. So I don't know. I think we were lucky to get it, and but it was one of those plays where you're like, yeah, we're conceding today. This ain't going to be a clean sheet. I mean, that's like how I walked away from that decision.
Yeah, when VAR's one of your best defenders of the day, it's going to be an issue. But to your point, Jason, yeah, it was 1-0 at the end of the match. It wasn't 5-0. So defensively, we did do some work. 46th minute, they do score. Martinelli gets through and is hurt. I have it in quotations in my notes right after. Was he trying to say that indeed he stomped on his leg there?
It looked nasty.
Did it look bad to you? It kind of looked like a glance to me.
It looked like he came down with a lot of weight.
Okay.
On those sides.
That's that made it 1-0. Any thoughts on the goal there, Chris, and how it all transpired?
Yeah, as I said earlier, it comes from just us being by the halfway line, just tippy-tappy, and no one being decisive. Like, there were opportunities there to get it further up the pitch, and we just didn't do it. And we're talking about it now. It becomes frustrating because it's a 1-0 game where the only goal of the game is really a self-inflicted wound on ourselves for being defensively stupid and switching off for 30 seconds. And the more you think about it now, the more it just frustrates you, because that was the difference. Because second half, the game was a mess. It was just consistently being broken up by fouls, the ball being out of play. And I mean, it was a perfect game plan second half if it was 0-0. But yeah, just a frustrating goal again. I mean, Matt, Danny Ward, could he have closed him down a little bit quicker? Could he? What do you think as the goalkeeper on the pod?
No,
What do you?
it's one of those where you could almost see Danny, and this is part of the problem with Danny is it's another one of those situations where you can almost see his brain, like he's working, he's thinking about it, and it's just you've got to be instinctive. And say what you will about Casper, I mean, it was always instinctive for his good or bad. So, and with Danny, there just seems to be consistently this millisecond of time where you watch his brain. It's kind of the Danny panic mode where it's just like he just has that slight second, and we've seen it burn him so many times. So, yeah, we've seen great improvement in the guy, but there's still, for me, it's just not instinctive. It doesn't seem to be second nature for him, and that's just so important at this level, Jason.
Yeah, remember Casper Schmeichel, he was a smaller goalkeeper, but he always did a really great job of making himself bigger in one-on-one situations.
Yeah.
And Ward almost seems to do the opposite sometimes. There is a little bit of that. You can see it. And I think there's a really good point that you made about that kind of hesitancy and that kind of overthinking. We see that a lot. We almost had a repeat of the Castagna debacle when he was going back to the goal and Ward was coming out and not coming out assertively to play that ball and make sure his defender knew what was going on. We see a lot of that from Ward. It went away during that 7-game stretch where he played really well going up to the World Cup. And it looked like a new Danny Ward who was making the defense his own. But he also did have a run of games with a consistent back line. Now there are some newer players, and maybe he's just not quite as sure what to do with them. But I think it also the whole team kind of suffered from that in the start of the second half. It's the same thing that we saw against Man United the week before. What's going on in each dressing room? I'd love to see the difference between what Ten Hag told his boys versus what Rodgers told his boys, because the second half last week, we came out, looked awful. United came out and just dominated the game. Then in this game, we come out in the second half, just don't really do much of anything. And it's start of the half. It's when you should be the most focused. But there's just something there that's the players are just kind of overthinking and not playing good instinctive football. And then it's hard enough to win in this league with what other teams are trying to do to you, and you can't shoot yourself in the foot. And it was I'm wondering how the players came out of that halftime and why they didn't come out there as switched on as they should have been.
Yeah, decisiveness was not there for sure. Last thing that I have on here, and really it was, in my opinion, probably the best chance of the entire match. 51st minute, Harvey Barnes does a great job, works the ball completely down the left side, and puts one on a silver platter to Tete, who misses it by 4 inches, of just tapping one in for an incredible goal that would have been an absolute beauty on a postage stamp. Jason, I see it kind of tossing your head around. What were your thoughts on that one?
I don't know how easy of a finish it was at that speed, but it was a hell of a play by Barnes, and it was a great ball. So it's one of those where I'm sure Tete wanted that one back.
Oh yeah,
and probably would back himself to score on it. But it would have been a hell of a goal. It would have been a great piece of skill. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that was what Harvey did there was probably the only bright spot offensively. It was a really nice play by him.
Yeah, Alan Smith was very, very complimentary of Harvey the whole match, and speaking about how he was, and that was the kind of goal that was the only way we were going to score. That it was going to have to be a play like that because they were making no mistakes and not letting our guys in. Chris.
Yeah, I think the left-hand side was an area that I think we could have exploited more. Maybe you're right. I thought Barnes was pretty good. I mean, and then you put the icing on the cake. If you want to go full circle, Yuri comes on, and then all of a sudden, after the game, is in crutches, going back to his car. I mean, if you just to sum up the performance, we go and pretend. I don't know. I mean, I know it's normal before the scans to put your player in boot and have crutches going out to the car and stuff, but it didn't look great. I mean, in the moment, it looked like he probably rolled it over, but who knows how long it might be. But yeah, just to add icing on the cake to that performance, we go and lose a player that I think would have been a key part of the run in. It's just sucks.
Yeah,
I hope that's not it for Yuri. Yeah, it was encouraging. He showed a lot of heart to stay out there. Excuse me. Love to see that from the guy, but hopefully the news is good. But as we know, with Leicester injuries, we get told something early, and it turns out not to be as positive.
For sure. Yeah, that was definitely that photo showed up around. That was just, salt into the wound after that result. So yeah, I think we spoke of it earlier, but a 0.01 XG and out of that match from us, which is in the history of expected goal account of the expected goal, that is the lowest in the history of it. Hey, we're making history, man. What do you say?
Lowest XG total. You'll never sing that.
That's perfect. We did have our match day correspondent. He's been missing for a little bit, but we did have our match day correspondent, Mr. Ollie McLean, was there, and he was nice enough to send us a video of his thoughts of the match. Chris, whenever you're ready.
Hey Matt, hey US Foxes, hope all is well. Just a quick word on the game against Arsenal today. You can't be too disheartened with a 1-0 loss to the team that's sat at the top of the table, but it's the manner that we played in for me today. Noticed that on one too many occasions that there was just no urgency at all. Just players didn't look interested like they have done. But to be fair, as soon as when they scored the first, they got disallowed. We did look a bit better. I started stringing a couple of decent passes together, but just lazy, really. I feel like if we tried, we could have got something out of that game, but there was just no heart in the game whatsoever, which is a shame because on our day we're absolutely incredible, but when we play like that with no heart, no courage, just no nothing, anyone will walk over us. But yeah, it is what it is. Truth be told, I wasn't exactly expecting anything, but we go again midweek, Blackburn, and then away at Southampton. As always, we keep the faith. Try to anyway. Publicity.
Thanks to Mr. McLean. Yeah, summing up basically what we all were saying on his cold walk home after the match. Jason, your thought, you pretty much said exactly what we said about that thing. No heart and just flaccid, I think is the word you used.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we know these are the types of games where we're going in as an underdog, so why not show a little fight?
Yeah, give something.
Well said, Ollie. Yeah, I agreed with everything you said there.
Yeah, thank you again, Ollie. As always, looking forward to hearing from you again soon. Moving on, guys. Chris pointed out a pretty cool anniversary, I guess. I definitely surprised me when you told me this. 4 years of Brendan. When was that? Was it yesterday or what? Is it today?
Tomorrow. So
tomorrow.
As people listen to this, he became Leicester manager the 27th of February 2019, and I don't know if you guys remember his first game in charge. We lost. We
did.
Well, surprised by that. What
was it 2-1? I think.
I think so.
I remember his first press conference, and I remember just being so pumped up about Rodgers, and we had just gone through the Claude Puel era, which, talk about some boring football like we saw yesterday. That was fairly par for the course under the Puel era. I mean, we weren't necessarily in danger of relegation or in any kind of relegation scrap like we are now. But, the football wasn't fun to watch. And Puel used to always talk in abstract terms, right? He'd always talk about this project and this process, but he never laid out goals. And it was really hard to kind of get behind him as a fan, and it was hard to judge a season or to judge any sort of success. And I'm sure it was difficult for players to play in this kind of like mid-table, these meaningless games. Rodgers came in right away. In that first press conference, he talked about getting into Europe, and that was his main goal, and winning trophies. And these are two things that Leicester City were going to do under him. He just laid it right out there, and that was such a breath of fresh air to me. And I just remember texting my brothers and texting my brother Ryan and said, like, this guy's a winner. Like, look, he was just picking up trophies at Celtic, which are expected. But, like, that's what he's here to do. That's what he did at Celtic. He was, they were ruthless up there domestically. And, that we started to play some, like, really attractive football under him. But there were, I think, some signs, though, of some of the tension that would happen later on or more recently, right, in his tenure. And he kind of, I remember being a little surprised. He talked about, like, the club spending money and, like, all he knows that like, we're going to make the investments in the squad. It was almost like, I remember I'm thinking at the time, like, is he already kind of trying to pressure the board into buying, enough players. But there was a certain, like, mentality switch right away when Brendan joined, and I was excited, and I don't know anyone who wasn't really excited about having Rodgers, and it really was a big coup. Back in the day, Celtic used to take all of our players and would take our manager, like Guppy, Lennon, Martin O'Neill. They went from Leicester to Celtic. And they were big parts of our success back then. And now look at Leicester able to do that, back to Celtic. And it felt good, man. Like, felt really good. And we dealt with some tough stuff over the months prior. And, the passing of Ishai, which I do think that Puel handled really well with a lot of class. But it was like, like, we're back, this belief, this fearlessness is back on the side.
Yeah, I remember too. I being just so stoked because it was multi-dimensional for me. Not only were we getting a manager that with tons of recent success at Celtic, we also got to piss off Celtic, to your point, Jason, because none of them could believe that Brendan was going to leave their fucking massive club, as they like to remind us, at every chance. He would never leave their massive club to come to little old Leicester. So I particularly enjoyed that part. I also, I was really excited because Brendan kind of left the Premier League in a shitty way, and I think he was going to have an axe to grind and was going to have a lot to prove. So I thought all of these things coming together are only going to be positive, for little Leicester, and him coming in and with a different mentality, a big club mentality. This is a guy that, say what you will about his time at Liverpool, was successful, and he did well with players like Suarez and Gerrard, and he was putting a stamp on this club, which I feel like Claude, for whatever he did, he never really made a stamp on this club, where I feel like Brendan did, Chris.
No, I agree with you both. I think that was the biggest. It felt like a good fit. I think one of the things that you often see, and you've seen it this year in some of the managerial decisions that have happened kind of in 2023, is that the decisions that the club makes don't inspire a fan base, and they don't bring that sense of, oh shit, something might happen here. And I think that's what we got when we got that Rodgers signing. To your guys' points, we got a guy that had an axe to grind. He thought the entire Premier League was against him. He wanted to prove himself. He thought whether or not you agree with him, or he thought he got done over badly at Liverpool. And he did that. He won everything he needed to win it at Celtic, came, and I mean, he took us to that next level. I think Leicester fans in 2018, 2019 under Puel could see what we had in a squad and could see some of the potential that we had and some of the players we had. Like, we had quality players, and it felt like Puel ball, as the fans now call it, this tippy-tappy, side-to-side, knock it backwards, was not maximizing the potential of the squad. And I think Rodgers showed in that last 3 months of the year, and then especially starting on his own in 2019, like what a squad we had in that first year under him. Holy shit. Like, I mean, we went on great runs. We played some of the best football I think I've ever seen Leicester play in my entire life. And I mean, yeah, it was just a perfect decision by the board. And I don't know personally about you guys, but it gave me that Martin O'Neill vibe again. It just gave me that sense of like we had someone on the sideline that was rooting for us, and just his demeanor in that first year as well. He always looked mean. He always looked like he was willing to like choose someone out if they did something wrong. And I was like, that's what I want in a manager. I want someone with that passion. And yeah, I mean, since then, yeah, things have happened, and maybe we can talk maybe more about some of the things that frustrate us as the guy in charge. But to go full circle, yeah, it was a really, really, really exciting appointment when it happened.
And Chris brought this up to us. He kind of mentioned in our group chat we should do our favorite positive thing about Brendan, our negative thing about Brendan, and something we wish Brendan would get better at. And I have my positive is obviously the FA Cup. It's a pretty easy one, I feel like. And doing something that we had only dreamed about for literally the entire history of our fandom and the entire history of this club, and getting that done on a day that will forever be, etched and engraved in any Leicester fan's mind. So, historical things like that tend to take that spot on the list. What's your favorite positive thing, Jason? Is it same thing? Am I stealing the easy one?
Yeah, for anyone who's listening and not watching the live screen, I do have a picture of Brendan Rodgers hoisting the FA Cup behind me. That was an incredible run to win that trophy, and it was something that it was almost like our white whale for all of these years. And a lot of Leicester fans, and I can certainly speak for myself and say, I never dreamed about winning the Premier League. It was always that FA Cup. That was always the trophy that I thought we could possibly get, because the Premier League just seems so out of reach. Love that about that's the highlight of Rodgers' turn. But he got us into Europe, in consecutive seasons. Our European performances were kind of up and down, but got us to we backed in kind of, but still got us to a semifinal. Yeah. And was, I think for any Leicester fan, I mean, getting to go see our club in Europe is the pinnacle. I mean, it's just an incredible experience. I think Rodgers is. The players have always seemed to really like him. There've always been like one or two outliers for the year, but you can see that the players like Brendan Rodgers, and that's key, because that doesn't always happen. And Rodgers has shown sometimes, he's shown a lot of tactical flexibility. I think a criticism that would always get lobbed at Rodgers is like, oh, he's doing the same thing over and over again. I'm like, actually, I think he does the opposite. I think he kind of changes setups and formations, quite a lot. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But the man understands football, absolutely. And I think if you look at his overall tenure, it's been good. There have been a lot of challenges. He did this all, throughout a pandemic, which is really difficult, on the club and I'm sure the players. Yes, I was disappointed that we didn't finish in Champions League in one of those two times where we finished 5th place. I think it was there for the taking, and we should have gotten it in the position that we were in. But overall, yeah, Rodgers talked about disrupting the top 6, winning silverware, and you have to say that he delivered on those promises. And I will always appreciate Brendan Rodgers for doing that.
Definitely. Chris, what do you got?
So, yeah, I think you two have 1 and 2 on that list. Obviously, the FA Cup, the European trips that we've been on. My third, I'll go with, do you remember that run in 2019, October through December, where we won 9 on the bounce and we were just not only just beating teams, we were battering teams. We did Arsenal over at the KP 2-0 in that run, and we looked just incredible. I remember we had the Everton game with the Iheanacho VAR decision at the end of it, where it was it on? It was off. No, then it was on, and everyone went bonkers. We battered Villa, battered Newcastle. Like, we were not just, to your guys' point, Rodgers coming in and emphasizing we were going to change it. We were doing it on the pitch, and that run, I think, was just incredible. And yeah, towards the end of the year, it didn't go our way, and whether that was just to the size of squad, players tiring, those sorts of situations happening, disappointing, I think, is a great word to describe it. But that run was just incredible, and I think that probably feeds me into my biggest frustration with him. Is that, I think, Jason, you said this, is that as a fan, you can get very frustrated with him because, yes, I think he definitely knows what he's doing, but at times that lack of communication to the fan base can just get so frustrating. And then on top of that, when he does communicate, the consistent negativity, and I think about last summer as well, as like, yeah, as fans, we know about the situation in the club. We know there's no money available. We're not going to get on your back. We know it's not your choice. You've said it twice, 3 times. If there was money available, we'd get players in. At that point, just keep your mouth shut. You don't need to keep reiterating. And it felt like he was doing it solely for the purpose of himself and himself only. So when he went to that next interview, he was like, well, it wasn't me. And that is just one of those frustrating things I have with him, is just sometimes I think the communication to the press, to the fan base, is just not what we want to hear as fans. And he'll still do it. We'll listen and we'll chat on our group thread about the Thursday morning or Friday morning press conference, and someone will post whatever spiel came out that day, and half of us will be like, why does he need to say that? And I think that just that media management is just something that I think is frustrating, and maybe something that he could think about a little bit more as he goes forward as Leicester manager.
Yeah, I have that as my negative as well. The low point was blaming fans, earlier this season was a really bad look. And I do think, Chris, it's a perfect point. Like, we love and laud him for his genius and his footballing brain. But I think sometimes his brain is his football brain is so complex that he kind of thinks everyone else is just stupid and cannot grasp. There's no way that we as a fan base can grasp what he's trying to do and explain. And because of that arrogance kind of comes and leaks into when he does make comments and things. And I think sometimes he gets in his own way and trips over his own feet, Jason.
Yeah. I think sometimes that comes across in how the players play. We've had a lot of injuries, and there are questions to be asked about how those have been managed and how players have been managed. And there's certainly a lot of talk about players being pushed into zones that maybe they shouldn't have been, and us not really handling the injuries as well as we have. And that's really cost us over the last few years. But I think these last 2 games are good examples, Matt, of when you're talking about complexity and overcomplicating the game. Sometimes I think that happens to the players, where like just adding too much, and instead of just kind of simplifying the game. And when you have a lot of injuries, when you're forced into rotation by default, or you're forced into to playing guys who aren't in your top 11, you need to simplify the game. You need a bread and butter formation kind of setup where it doesn't matter who you're playing, doesn't matter who your opposition is, doesn't matter what your 11 is. You can put these guys out there and they can go through those motions. They can play that in their sleep. They can play that way when they're exhausted. They know what to do. They have that kind of, just those instincts are there. And because he's switched up, formations and setups and done all this so many times, we don't really have that identity, right? There's no Leicester identity right now with football. It was very easy to say what our footballing identity was. I'd say, for example, when we won the Premier League, it's very easy to talk about like what Man City does, and how they set up to play a game, or how Liverpool sets up to play a game. But it's really difficult to do that about Leicester. And that's one thing that I always think it's always been, I guess, a frustration of mine. And I think, a reason for results that don't go our way when we should go into some of these games with a fighting chance. A few years back, when we played Villa 4 times in the season. That was we lost to them in just really frustrating circumstances. Got knocked out of the cup. We were the better side. Should have won the game. It was another BS refereeing decision that game. But we played Aston Villa 4 times, and we were, top 6 side, right? And flying high and playing well, and we're the better side. And we played 4 different formations against that crappy Aston Villa team, where it's like, no, we're going to play our game, and you're going to adjust to us. Yeah. And that always sticks out in my mind as like an example of what Rodgers, does sometimes, and sometimes does a little too often.
That's a great one. That frustration of not sticking to our philosophy and trying to, I think both you guys sum it up perfectly.
It's so weird. It's like, why? It's just like it's like he was just, as a personal vendetta, to just prove to the world how fucking smart he is. He's gonna change. It's like, bro, you're doing fine. Yeah, he definitely gets in his own way.
He could do himself, a lot of favors by sort of getting everyone on the same side. And you guys made some good points. Maybe he doesn't feel like he necessarily needs the fans right on his side. But when you're going through tough times, that's when you want to present a united front. That's where you want your fans and your players fighting together and everyone on the same side. And we did get a lot of excuses this year. Now, some of them were just right. I empathize with Rodgers. I mean, you can't expect to compete in this league and not really do any serious business in a summer transfer window. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So, I mean, Rodgers definitely earned some, I don't know, some empathy points, right, from the fan base. But it was a really, really bad start to the season. But, you got to get everyone together and fighting together. And you can't always football your way out of every problem. Sometimes you have to fight your way through. Sometimes you need the fans to do that, to help you, to, get on the other team, to get on the referees, to kind of suck that goal in for you when you need it. And if these other teams are out there trying to knock you down, trying to punch you in the mouth, and you're facing against a team that's desperate to win the league, to get into top 4, or to survive themselves, that's like walking into an alley and there's a big guy with some who's ready to mug you, and you're probably not going to kind of figure out and kind of parkour your way out of that, or kind of outsmart him. Sometimes there's nowhere to go, and you will have to just fight your way through to survive. And there were times over the last couple of seasons where maybe we could have done a little bit more of that. But that doesn't seem to be Rodgers' kind of personality. And that's kind of, it doesn't seem to be the side's personality to play that way either.
That's perfectly leads into my next question, which was, what do we wish Brendan could get better at? And mine is, relating to fans and showing a bit more of the the common man, I guess. Like, act a little bit more like a common man, show a little bit more everyday guy passion. Some of these times we see him just casually talking to a referee when we all want to see nothing more than him screaming at the referee. He just always has this measured approach, when I think sometimes a lot of us would like to see a little bit more passion about some of these things. So, what do you think? What do you think?
So, Matt, are you saying that what Brendan Rodgers could improve at is being Nigel Pearson?
Yes, definitely. I would love that. I would love a pinch of Nigel would do Brendan well, I think. You never go full Nigel, but I do think that a pinch of Brendan and a little bit of the ostrich attitude would go a long way in helping him. Chris, what do you have on that?
I think I'd like to see him be more brave. I think one of the problems that we have, and we always talk about this, and Jason talked about it this just earlier on. Ten Hag at halftime goes in, changes the game. We lose 3-0. This afternoon, I don't know if you guys saw it, the Carabao Cup final, same guy again. Newcastle are all over them in the second half. What's he do? He immediately makes 2 changes to try and just get the game back under control. I think of all of the frustrations we had as a fan base this season before the World Cup, in Rodgers' lack of an inability to even want to make a substitution. And then when he went to make a substitution, pretty much the entire fan base is like, well, that was the wrong one. Like, what are you doing? We obviously saw that this needed to happen. So for me, I would like to see more of that just bravery of, like, if the game is going to shit, or like, it's obvious that we need to make a change here, someone's not performing or whatever, just do it. Live with the repercussions afterwards. Defend your decision. Ultimately, if you make the right decision, you make the wrong decision. If you can defend it in that moment, then as a fan base, we can disagree, but we can't get angry at the fact that you made a decision. What we do get angry at is just your, at times, inability to make a decision. So I would ask for him moving forward, be a bit braver in those moments, trust the squad, and just make a decision.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a good kind of thought, right, here, because the board has clearly shown that they're not going to make rash decisions with Rodgers, right? And he's here, and he probably will be here through the course of his contract, unless things really go haywire, or someone comes in and offers a buttload of money to get him. And who knows, Chelsea may panic, and Bowley seems to be set on burning up as many pound notes as possible while owning that club. But look, Rodgers is here, and overall, it's been good. I mean, this is the most successful era of football that we've ever had, like, sustained success. And so some of these are kind of like first world problems, but I think that a lot of times we can kind of make these criticisms because we see that there's more there, and we see that there is still more potential with some of these players, and with this combination, of Rodgers and the squad that he has. So yeah, I think that you guys are all right. Like get the boys, get the fans on your side, get the players fighting more. I think we need to kind of simplify the football a little bit more. And yeah, I think those are all things that, if Rodgers did a bit more of, I think would lead to more success.
Yeah, we say it a lot, but we're so far from the days of, Mickey Adams and Dave Bassett and things like that. It does seem funny when we start talking about where we are as a club and start nitpicking, because yeah, Jason, this is the greatest. We're in the glory. I mean, times.
Yeah, but not very many managers make it this far at any club in this division. Right? There really aren't. There are only a couple of other managers that have. This is the longest that Brendan Rodgers has ever been at a club. So we saw in January that new signings are needed, and you constantly need to kind of refresh the club. And it's important. And things go stale. Doesn't matter how good someone is, unless you have the best of the best, and you can constantly kind of refresh your squad. It's going to go stale eventually. There are, managers that have been able to kind of withstand all that and have sustained success. Alex Ferguson at Man United is an example, but he would always bring in a couple of new players each year. Pep Guardiola, right, is another one. But now you look at Liverpool, it's gone awfully stale there. They've brought in some new guys too. So sometimes that just happens, and there's no escaping that. I was just looking at some statistics just over the last 4 years, and our shots per game just have decreased each year, and we're now averaging a full shot on target less than when Rodgers took over. Probably even more, because we weren't shooting as much under Claude Puel that season. We probably had so we've seen a massive decline there in the number of opportunities that we create. And the Arsenal game proved it with 0.001 xG. So the things are getting stale, though, and that is a little bit of the reality here. We're still in a relegation scrap. So it's going to be interesting next season to see what happens, and to see if Rodgers is able to be at the helm and oversee what's going to be a massive squad rebuild by default. It has to be. We've got players out of contract. Madison's going into the last year of his contract. I think we all think that he's going to be sold. And there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of quality that we're going to lose. That's going to be very difficult to replace. And for a lot of Rodgers' tenure here, he's relied on that individual brilliance to carry us, especially now. We lean very heavily on James Madison to do something special when the goals have dried up from our attackers, and we just don't create chances during games. So something is, but we're going to see a much different Leicester City next season. We still aren't guaranteed to see a much different Leicester City in the Premier League, right? There's still a lot of points that still need to be won this season, but something's going to change, and we'll have to see if Rodgers will be the man to see that through.
I think you can draw a direct line. This is for another podcast, but I do think that there's something to be said for like you said, the shots going down, and then also just the reality of Jamie Vardy. getting older, and the fact that he has been our attack for so many years, and we're just seeing a reality that we all, I guess, pretended or tried to pretend forever that was not going to happen, and that he was this ageless freak and we could rely on him forever, and we're now seeing the repercussions of that, and not having a direct replacement necessarily for him. But that's for another podcast. I think we can dive into that. Chris, what did you want to say, bud?
I would just say one last point. If I'm a glass half full guy, which I am sometimes, I echo Jason's points 100%. And I would say that maybe this is the catalyst, that the fresh start is exactly what Rodgers needs. And maybe he needs the whole squad lose half the squad to make it feel again like it's a brand new squad with opportunity, and allows him to refocus. And so maybe if there was a positive to come out of that maybe this summer is an opportunity for us to kind of get away from that staleness and think about it as a brand new fresh start for not only just the squad but also for the manager.
You guys talked about the comments that he's made to the media, and sometimes shots at people unnecessarily, not necessarily presenting a united front, and kind of self-preservation mode. But that is one thing that he does sound genuinely excited about. Like, he brings it up pretty often, and he seems to really be excited for this opportunity to rebuild the squad and work with some new players. So hopefully he kind of, if Rodgers is still here, he does approach it with a kind of the gusto in his voice when he does talk about those possibilities.
Yeah, he definitely, it's always an optimistic tone. There's no doubt about that. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for that, bud. We are at over an hour already, guys. So we'll wrap this one up. We do have some pretty massive matches this week, starting with Tuesday versus Blackburn. Our FA Cup journey continues with a matchup we all were very excited about. I don't think we could have done much better. Shout out to Emil for that nice little poll. I guess quickly, guys, Blackburn, it is a team. They're 3 games in a they've won 3 in a row on the bounce. So it's going to be one of those lower level sides trying to prove themselves, show that they can play a higher level football. That's always a dynamic here. When you have young, hungry players that want to show that they belong to a Premier League side, they use it as an audition. We've seen it 100 times against us. So that is a scary matchup. It's great to be playing a lower side, but we do have to deal with that, Chris. Your thoughts going into Tuesday quickly?
Yeah, I think we'll win. They were Blackburn fourth in the championship. That championship is a crazy league, by the way. If anyone's interested in kind of watching another league for the rest of the season, highly encourage the championship this year. There's nothing between like the top 10. But yeah, I think we'll win. I think it's a great opportunity for us. I think we just need to take this as seriously at the moment as we do the Premier League, because I genuinely think if we can get another decent draw in the next round, who knows? Like, there could be Wembley could be on the cards, and it would be fantastic for to be able to get 45,000 Leicester fans down there to kind of make it up a little bit for the limited fans that could go down for the FA Cup due to COVID. So yeah, I think we go all in, and I think we need to win on Tuesday, Matt, because Saturday is such a huge game as well. Bottom of the league, away from home. You know what Leicester are like in those situations at times. So if we can win, just get that sense back of what winning feels like, I think that will do us huge going into Southampton away.
I'm with you. I think it's a momentum thing would be just incredible for us heading into that Saturday, 9:30 Pacific time. Nice little late kickoff for us, and so really stoked about that. But I'm with you. I think get a little bit of momentum, put some goals, remind ourselves that we are a good football team that can win matches. We were hard done by some referees. Let's forget about that Arsenal match. And yeah, you're pretty much on the same page there, Jason.
Yeah, well, I was certainly a lot more excited for the Blackburn game when the draw was made than I am now, because they are playing good football. They're really climbing up the table. It's going to be a tough game. But as you said, Matt, a win on Tuesday and a win on Saturday, and suddenly the season looks and feels a lot different. It's one thing when we talk about Rodgers. It's one thing I didn't mention is I do appreciate his approach to cup football. He takes the cups very seriously, and those are our best chances to win silverware. And I think he will put out a strong side. If we can get that win on Tuesday, which it is going to be tough, but suddenly Wembley is there and in sight. And if we can get to Wembley, now you look back at Rodgers' tenure, and damn, it looks a lot better. And I mean, there's already an argument to make that he is our best ever manager. But now you factor in more Wembley trips, now over 4 years into it. And he has the opportunity to really seal it with a cup run, and really kind of make this season feel a lot more positive. So I am looking forward to Tuesday. So I don't mean to act like not. I am, because a win and suddenly go to the we're in the quarterfinals and Wembley's on the horizon. And then if we can win against Southampton this weekend, again, we always we play weird games against them, but that's another kind of relegation rival that kind of gets put down a bit further. It could be an opportunity for us to kind of give us a little bit of breathing room there, if the results go our way around us.
Definitely a little bit of trepidation, but I am positive, and I think obviously Yuri being hurt, that's he's been pretty important to our FA Cup run. So let's all pray and hope for the best, that our favorite Belgian can recover and maybe put his mark on the match as well. Anything else, Jason, Chris? Anything before we let the people go? I do want to say, give a shout out to my dad. It's his 71st birthday today. So big shout out to my dad, Sonny Folks. Yeah, love you, buddy. He helped me really cement my fandom of this team, because as a kid, he was buying jerseys from England and paying ridiculous shipping fees for a team that he'd never heard of. He was never a soccer fan, but he was always insanely supportive of me and my love of this random team in the Midlands of England. So shout out to Sonny Folks on his birthday. And yeah, guys, thank you for listening, as always, to the US Foxes podcast. It's a crazy time right now, but hey, it was only 1-0 against the league leaders. So we'll take what we can get. We've got a chance here to get another cup run going. And yeah, the guys, the games in March and April are very winnable, and they're against teams that we have a very good chance at getting out of trouble. So hopefully we can springboard on a little momentum and keep things going from there. So yeah, guys, as always, thank you for joining us on the US Foxes podcast. Shout out to our other co-host, Jim, who's doing some traveling, couldn't join us from Houston as usual. So we'll get back with him later. And yeah, we'll be back to normal then. So for Jason in New York and Chris up in Del Mar, I'm Matt. Thanks to Ollie, our correspondent in Leicester. And yeah, guys, we will see you next time on the US Foxes podcast. Peace.